everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hot Jobs. Rue and I are back to talk about not only the hottest jobs, but of course, a topic about career search and career search advice. So thanks for joining me again this week, Rue.
Glad to be here.
Before we get into our topic, first, I just want to let people know that we do monitor the comments. So you can drop in the comments where you are tuning in from, what type of job you are looking for, and of course, any questions on what we're going to be talking about today, which is ego in the job search. But before we get to that, I am going to highlight one of our sponsors, Heritage Roofing and Construction. They are a company out of Central Texas who does both residential and commercial roofing and construction, especially if you've had a weather event. Unfortunately, we've had a bunch of weather events here. So certainly would be looking for a company like Heritage in my area, but you can check out, they do have direct hire opportunities as well as skill bridge opportunities with Heritage in the Central Texas area, especially if you're interested in entrepreneurship or owning your own business, project management. You get all of that type of experience at Heritage. They're an awesome company to work for. They love hiring veterans because they said they know how to plan and they're great at milestones and connecting with their customers. So something to think about in the Central Texas area. But today, Rue and I are going to be talking about ego in the job search. So Rue, when we were discussing our topic for today, I started looking up like, what even is ego? Like, what does that even mean? And fun Jeopardy fact, ego actually means I in Latin. So it is definitely the conscious self of self when you realize that you have your own presence, and that's how we think of ourselves, is how we're going to be discussing ego today.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. When people don't like what you're saying, then it's it's a negative ego. But then you should also you need to be your biggest advocate, especially in the job market and looking for roles for yourself. You got to maybe sprinkle a little ego onto your responses to show that you're confident, to show that you are well read on their subject and things like that.
There's definitely like a Goldilocks. There's too much and too little, but there is an amount that's just right. Yeah. Sure. So a couple of things about in our experiences, how ego kind of shows up in the job search. A couple of ways that I've seen it. Someone who is hesitant to receive any feedback or criticism that maybe contradicts on how they think they show up for themselves. Another one that I think we're definitely going to touch on today is either applying for or being considered for a role that the person has deemed is a lower level than where they're at. So maybe a role that they deem is beneath them. I think the other part would be not asking for help or feeling like networking or reaching out to folks or helping other folks is not something that they particularly need to do, whether that's weakness or maybe feeling like they are above connecting with others. Rue, what about you? Where have you seen ego sabotage the job search?
Yeah, I go through my own 14 months of unemployment that I went through over the last 2 years. And I went through all the stages that you just talked about. When you first start to apply, you're like, I came from this level, I expect this level. So your search and filter is like only for that. And then maybe you'll see, I think where I started to know it the first time is when recruiters that I was working with offered me, hey, would you like to try this position? It's like 1 or 2 lower than where I was at. And I was like, no, that's a little low for me. Even regardless of what the pay was, I just was like taking 2 steps back. And then as time goes on, you're like, okay, I'll take anything that I can get for, and I can work my way up. And there's definitely emotion involved in all of it. Like if you get offered a role that is above what you thought, then obviously you're happy. And if it's lower, you're sad, or worse, mad. And that actually started to bleed into my interviewing. Comments that were a little snarky, not necessarily at the individual I was working with or the company, but when they're talking about your job search and what have you been seeing in the market, and me throwing a little snarkiness out there. And it took my wife being on the other side of the computer and then after the call to be like, hey, you were coming across really negative in that talk. Like, this was me receiving feedback. And at first I was like, well, yeah. And then I was like, no, you're totally right. And so then I made it a conscious self and like made myself consciously go, I'm positive. I'm like doing a little mantra before the call goes on. I'm like, I'm happy. And then trying to convey that over to the interviewer.
And as we're talking about ego, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's very hard to separate our emotions and how we feel about ourselves in these instances. We just said ego means I. So like emotions are definitely going to influence how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about an opportunity, or how we perceive information that's coming in. One of the questions that I had for you when we were bringing up this topic is this is definitely something we see in our community of either active duty military, transitioning service members, or veterans. And one of my questions to you, especially with your background, is like, why does this feel so prevalent in this community? What is happening, I guess, maybe on the personnel or HR side, where people feel like they have an inflated sense of ego? And I don't say that to be negative, but like, why is this happening? Why does this community really struggle with this?
Yeah, it's kind of the community that the military comes from. If you compare it to the civilian side, then it is inflated. But if you're inside of the military, the whole process is inflated. And a lot of it stems from leaders not wanting to tell their subordinates that they're bad at something. That's the first thing. And I'll circle back to that. The second thing is you have to play the hand you're dealt. So if you don't like a service member's performance and you want to give them an accurate evaluation, it's either one, going to put them out, two, break their spirit so that they don't work for you, or they leave, and can you get a backfill? So there's like, it's a double-edged sword. So people don't want to tell people that they're doing bad, so that gets worked into the evaluation process and the awards. For evaluation process, I just so everyone knows, I was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. I was HR for 16 of those years. And I've been head of HR in brigades, worked at 3-letter agencies, and did things like that. The number of times that I've seen, we'll just use top 10%. I'm sure there's somebody on here who's had an evaluation that says they're in the top 10%, number X of X. Those are all ways to quantitatively get after the pool of people. But 10% of 10 people would be one person. But I can guarantee you, if a commander wants to keep those people motivated and engaged, if he gives them anything lower than 10, any of them lower than 10%, they're going to feel hurt about it, or they're unknowing and they're just used to that. And they're going to be like, oh, I'm still good. I'm in the top 10% of all these people.
Sure.
So that, and then the mandatory award for your service while you've been at a location. You're there a year, you're there 2 years. Good example, deploying to Afghanistan, 6,500 awards. And that's just for end of tour. And people did things during, and then you can't write about the things you did during in your end of tour award, because that'd be getting awarded for the same thing twice. So it just perpetuates this. You're doing great. You're getting all this stuff on your chest that people on the outside are like, whoa. People on the inside are like, hey, I got another award. I got to buy a new thing and get this all repositioned. And that takes time and money. So that builds up that culture that when you then are transitioning, you're like, look at all my bells and whistles and all this cool stuff I did. You're going to, one, know what that is, and two, you're going to want me immediately. Not so much the case.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about often is, more likely than not, the recruiter, hiring manager, or point of contact at a private sector company has never served. So the awards and top 10% are truly lost in translation because they don't have anything equivalent or they don't understand what that means. And then, from my perspective, I see a little bit of like the culture shock of like, but I'm the top 10%. And the civilian side is like, so is everyone else here, or they're top 5, or like, what would I quantitate that as? Like, well, I don't have anything to compare to for your service to someone in the private sector. So having that lost in translation and then the kind of backlash of, but I'm the best. And everyone has told me so my whole career. Then to go somewhere and be like, well, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I see it, with the people that run through the TSR program, they'll depending on where they're at in their transition, the majority of them are, hey, I put a resume together and it was based off of my evaluations. So it was like very chewy, very military speak, but very positive. And getting somebody from the outside to, and I've had the majority of the people are like, thank you so much for helping me. But some people are like, oh, I know I'm good and I don't need to make those changes. And then somewhere down the road, they kind of go, because I check on people, I'll see, oh, their LinkedIn changed with the recommendations that we came up with. And it's important to find someone that's like farther away from your circle to give you a realistic look at what it is you have on paper and on digitally to represent yourself to other people.
I think that's great advice, is to have that diversity of someone who can look at this, who's a few layers or degrees removed. And I want to touch back on something that you said, because ego is different than being confident, right? Being confident in your abilities. And like you said, most times in the job search, you do have to be your biggest advocate. And you have to be able to prop yourself up in a way that looks suitable for an employer. But how can ego and confidence, what is the difference that you see, or how do you coach people who maybe need to take a step down on ego, but they can appear very confident? How would you kind of coach someone through that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's, you got to read the room. You got to understand who you're talking to. Let me use my wife as another example. In the military, we speak very direct. You see my hand coming out, doing the knife.
Yeah, shark fin.
And that means like, hey, I really mean, and I'm directing this at you, I really mean what it is I'm saying. And the tone in which we use that is one that is projectable, one that can be heard, diaphragmatic breathing, it's sharp. And a lot of times in conversations, when you start to get excited or recall and get emotional, you'll start to pick up and drop off. People are really concerned about their culture, and that is a standout difference from the majority of civilian agencies that want to keep the peace. They want to keep what they have, unless they're looking for somebody to shake it up and swing bats.
Change agent.
Then you need to kind of gauge what it is you're looking for, and a lot of that comes from researching the company and the people that you're going to be talking to. And seeing like where they came from, what they've done, what are they posting about, what are the company values, and what's important to the CEO, things like that.
Yeah. Doing your research, knowing who's in the room is going to be a huge leg up on how you're going to present both yourself, like you said, with even things like tone of voice, body language, as well as your experience and how you might frame that.
I started to get a lot of perceptions of myself. People that know me know that I'm pretty go with the flow. I'm accepting of mistakes. As long something goes wrong, what's your recommended course of action to move forward with it? Things are really, really bad in a civilian agency, and people are bouncing off the walls. We're used to a little more chaos, so we're very strong. But I did start to get the sense that being an HR professional, being male, being African-American, being from the military, there's a lot of that doesn't really fit the normal HR picture. If you
Sure.
looked at the numbers. And that I started to get this chip on my shoulder of like, this is like the wrong role for me. These are the wrong roles for me because people are expecting someone not so direct, someone that's a or someone that they can, you just handle the HR stuff and don't get into any of the operational stuff that deals with people, which is what you do because it's all connected. So you got to just get in where you can into the flow of the company, and you got to pick and choose your battles of where you're going to raise your hand. What's great about people is if it's life, limb, eyesight, or the safety of the organization, HR's always got the ability to raise their hand and be like, stop, that's not going to work, and you got to listen, or we're liable to see a lawsuit and or
here to protect
fine to the company.
So I have to imagine that we have a couple of people watching, and I don't assume that they're in the comments, who are starting to maybe wonder if their own egos are getting in the way of some of the opportunities that they've either been presented, or they are limiting their search, or sabotaging themselves unknowingly during their career search. What would be the first step you would give these folks? How can they kind of course correct, if you will?
I say talk to multiple recruiters. Okay. And I say you may have one that you're working with, but you need to talk with 2 or 3. A good example would be, and this isn't exactly related to your question, but like I could take my resume that one recruiter's like, this is great. We worked on it for a month. It's perfect. I could literally get with another recruiter. Yeah, here's my current resume for this job. And they're like, the layout's bad. It's A, B, C, and D, and it can be completely different. And you go to a third one, and hopefully it's one of those 2. And then you should kind of lean that direction, but you should be continually bringing in metrics that you can shift off of. And then you should also be looking at news and current events and things that would possibly affect your job search. A lot of times when I'm talking to participants and they're like, hey, I've got an offer from this place and this place, but I want to wait to hear from here before I go to there. And they didn't offer me this much at this place. I'm like, well, you've got to maybe look at the bigger picture. There may be things going on behind the curtain that you don't know about, and they're not privileged to tell you about. And you need to take in that it could just be a fluke. And sometimes stuff happens and it doesn't work out.
I think that's great advice. I think the other thing that I'm hearing you say is be open to feedback, right? It's not personal. If someone says like, hey, adjust this on your resume, it's not personal. It's not an attack on you. They're giving you this feedback in order for you to be successful. I posted about this a couple of weeks ago, but your analogy reminded me. One of my favorite podcasts is Good Hang with Amy Poehler, and she had John Cena on a couple of weeks ago. I'm not a wrestling fan, but this episode was excellent. And one of the things he said was, the way he has been successful, he's very humble. He talks about how to guarantee you will not be successful is to be like uncoachable, unreliable, uninvested, and uninterested. And I thought that was such like really great translatable advice. So if you are looking to be successful, you're going to get there a lot quicker. If you are coachable, if you receive feedback from other folks, if you can be reliable, if you can be interested and invested in your own success, versus the everyone is against me type of attitude. And I think that kind of talks about to the ego as well.
Yeah. And think about like where we are, the day and age that we're in, and cell phone technology and computer, we're over the screen. And if I said something that was totally uncalled for on this call, the amount of time that it would take to get to people is pretty quick. So if you are an outside of the circle type person that doesn't want to play with others, doesn't get along well, is abrasive in a way that makes people not want to approach and talk to you. This is a big problem with leadership, because then you can't raise your hand and say, hey, we're messing up. Then you're gonna people are going to know, and you're going to fail, and you're going to start to feel yourself start to get isolated and pushed away.
Tough place to be.
Yeah.
It's a tough place to be.
And even worse is it's so hard to come back.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I always liked the phrase, say it, forget it, write it, regret it.
Yeah, but
So
now
I think you don't want
everything
everyone to
said
know.
is basically in its own written, solid, forever word, because everything's recorded, everything's
Yes.
digital.
And it's out there immediately, like this session here. Before we get to a couple of jobs, I just wanted to highlight a couple of people who are job seeking and tuning in today. So I'll just put you guys up on the screen. Cybersecurity analyst role. We are going to get to some jobs today. Safety coordinator in construction. Frederick, we actually have a skill bridge in this sector. Even if you're not SkillBridge eligible, why don't you go ahead and check it out? You can always apply, and I can see if there's any wiggle room for direct hire. We do have a safety coordinator quality assurance type position, so maybe just check it out first on our website.
It's in Texas also, isn't it?
There are multiple locations. There are like 15 or so locations, so we can see what works there. Just want to put up a couple people. Thanks for tuning in and dropping in a comment. There are usually hiring managers and recruiters who watch. So I will go ahead. Oh, Clarksville, Tennessee. Remember to put what you're looking for if you are a job seeker. And the rest of you look like I can't put yours up. But I appreciate that. Before we get to some jobs, I was telling Rue, I have a book recommendation for anyone who likes to read. The Inner Game of Tennis happens to be on my bookshelf. This is over and over recommended for ego, mostly in performance. I said this is actually, it's not really a book about tennis. It uses tennis as the perspective about ego and about the relationship to yourself. It's only 130 pages. You could easily get through this. Super great. Another one, a little bit more dense, if you really like non-light reading.
Or dictionaries.
Yeah, it really does read like a textbook. So you've been warned. I don't know that you have to read the whole thing, but I think there are chapters that are applicable. It's not going to hurt. I'm going to tell you that. It's not going to hurt. So,
yeah, it's probably a good one to like get some feedback from people.
Yeah.
These are things I need to work on. Match those up and then go to the book, find a chapter that
I agree.
Go.
Yeah, I actually think Inner Excellence would be best like that, is to read a little bit, go out and live your life and come back to it. This is really dense. It does read like a textbook. I think the Inner Game of Tennis is much lighter, kind of read like a story. You're kind of like, okay, where are you going with this? So just my 2 cents, as I like to read. As we get to some jobs today, why don't we start with TSR? If you want to talk about the TSR program, I'm going to put up our flyer, but can you talk to us about TSR and who TSR is for?
Yeah, the Tailored Strategic Retention Program is one of Tenova's #1 contracts, and we are bridging the gap for transitioning military who are in the cyber and IT and cyber enabler IT, for an example, roles. It's the lines, you have to be in and you got to be transitioning out. Maybe you just transitioned out. Give us a call. I'd rather hear from you than not hear from you and see where we can help you, at least especially from a networking standpoint. If you're retiring, we will give you a 1-hour coaching session that can kind of get you some direction. I usually throw in a lot more time than that, looking at people's resumes and things like that, because it's pretty simple for me to look at and translate. But what this does is set you up with a tailored program to get you to where you need to be. The transition assistance program that the military puts service members through as they're transitioning out is very unique in the way that what you get at each location could be different. There are certain boxes that have to be checked, but it doesn't necessarily flow the same. You have different instructors and what have you. You're also in there with anywhere from one instructor at a time to up to 30 or so individuals, although that it's typically lower than that in most cases. So you don't necessarily have the time to dig into specifics that would help you out in your transition. And so what TSR does is allows you to have qualified career coaches with industry experience and a network of connections to help look at those shortfalls in your transition and target those specifically. It's not a we do it for you, but it's a we do it with you. We hold your hand along the way. And if we can't answer or get you the information you need, we're going to find someone who can through our network.
I like to think of, no, we always say, we cannot replace TAP. This is not replacing TAP. Everyone goes through TAP. And if TAP is the buffet, that TSR is ordering off the menu. So you're getting exactly what you want. You are getting one-on-one. Where do I need help with my transition? It's not, hey, this is what we're having for lunch. It's like you get to order your specific meal. So if you are a cyber professional, IT, cyber enabler, coming towards maybe separating, we would love to hear from you on how we can help and how you can opt into the program. If you scan the QR code that's up on the screen right now, it will take you directly to our application. If you have questions and just want to talk to a team member, you can also drop a comment here or email us at tsrinfo@tenovallc.com, just up on the screen right now. So either of those will work great. So we'd love to hear from you. And like Bruce said, might as well reach out. We'll let you know, if you qualify, but happy to provide that at least an hour of coaching, complimentary, just so that you have more information about the program. And it's fully funded. No cost to the service member, completely free.
Forgot to add that.
No cost.
I will say, when you do send any correspondence, give a little background on yourself, that like what are your problems and issues, so that start to formulate something before we actually have a first call.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up today, I have more news about our TI partnership with SkillBridge. So I talk about the positions at Texas Instruments a lot here for our SkillBridge program. So we have a partnership with Texas Instruments for SkillBridge, where we place equipment technicians into 3 of their facilities: Dallas, Texas, Lehigh, Utah, and Portland, Maine. I got a call from them earlier saying, no more guardrails. They want to hire as many transitioning service members as possible. We used to be limited for number of seats, and now they have taken the limit off the table. So that means we're accepting, actually I just got off the phone with someone who's been accepted for early 2027. So it is not too soon to secure your spot. We are giving out interviews and offers for positions all the way through 2027. So it is not too soon. The role itself is an equipment technician. So we're looking for people who have mechanical aptitude. What does that mean, or what does that look like? Someone who can troubleshoot and do maintenance repair on electrical systems. So people that I've seen be successful in this role, people with some type of like machinist mate, aviation technology, but also if you just have an interest in building computers and someone who likes to work on cars. So even if that is your personal interest and something you do in your free time and maybe not your specific job in active duty service, you can still absolutely qualify. So if you have that mechanical aptitude, I had an applicant, I can't remember what his MOS was, but in his spare time, he restored cars. And he ended up having a great internship. So that's something to think about too, is maybe you do have these skills, but you've used them in your personal life or for hobbies. That can absolutely apply. And you can head over,
They're not an organization that, I mean, it's clear to me that Texas Instruments is about their people and about growing them and mentoring them. So if you think, I have gaps, it's a place that once you get in, they're going to grow and cultivate you into whatever it is that needs to be.
I totally agree. I think the other thing that I've seen from them is that they are really ramping up production, and they are consistently they promote from within. So it's actually pretty hard to get into the door at Texas Instruments as it stands currently. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like 60% of promotions come from within, or you need to have a referral to even get to a first interview. So this is the way. This is the way to get in, is through an internship. They have a great onboarding program. They're very prepared for all of their interns. We always like to mention that if relocation is going to be an issue, they do provide a living stipend, which is different than any other SkillBridge we have. They give that stipend regardless of military status. So even their college interns do get a living stipend because they want people to have a great experience and not for it to be a burden. So something to consider. If this is something that you think you could be interested in, or just want to have a general conversation, go ahead and head up to our website. You can apply directly on the SkillBridge page on our job board. And one of the team members will give you a call and talk about it. But I always like to mention that now accepting through 2027. So it's not too soon to have these conversations.
Yeah, it's a great company.
Great company, lots of growth, rapid growth. I mean, they are doubling up in production. So, well, we're just over 30 minutes today. Rue, again, I want to thank you for all your insight and joining us for Hot Jobs today. And thanks to everyone who commented. Don't forget to check out our website with all of our opportunities and resources. And of course, if you're interested in the TSR program and if you want to see if you qualify, go ahead and drop a comment here and one of the team members will reach out to you. Thanks everyone. See ya.